Are you desperately in need of a hug on this entrepreneurship journey? Then today's episode is for you. It is no wonder that when you get two entrepreneurs, two working mamas, and a company built to make moms' lives easier together, that we really got into the heart of what it takes to be an entrepreneur and really how tough this journey is. If you're in a season of this journey that's hard, it's heavy, it's overwhelming, it's probably why you're here. I want you to know that A, you can be overwhelmed and over it, but B, you are celebrated and honored. And so inside of this episode, we ask you to just take a second, give yourself a pat on the back, and remind yourself just how worthy and incredible you are for even choosing to walk on this journey. This is Overwhelmed and Over It, where success doesn't have to cost you your sanity as an entrepreneur. I'm your host, Gabs, and I bring you 10-ish minutes of real founder stories and their real solutions without any fluff, so that way you can build a business without burning yourself out. Let's get to it. While I swore I was done having kids, the minute I heard about her company, it made me think just twice about maybe I wanted to do it one more time. And while my husband really, really hopes that I would say yes, that's a big no for me.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on, Gabs. I am Tirza Hova. I am the founder of Milk by Mom. We are a breast milk freeze drying service. Basically, we take your frozen milk and turn it into powder, and it preserves all the nutrients, antibodies, and it's good for 3 years instead of 6 to 12 months. So it's like the freedom and flexibility of formula, but the convenience of your breast milk, and all the goodness that's in that. I am the proud mama of 2 little girls. And unlike your situation, my husband's like, the hell no. And I'm kind of in the teeter, like I could be a hell no, but I see babies all day. So the baby fever is definitely real. I am Latina, born in Costa Rica, half American, and I've been living in Phoenix, Arizona now for almost 6 years and getting deeper and deeper roots. Hey, now I have a business here, so I'm here for a while, here to stay.
And just before we hit record, we're talking about like finding space for the business to grow into. So like you're really putting some roots down.
For sure.
Awesome. Well, I know a little bit about your founder story. I know we talked about when we first met, but I would love for you to share that you didn't wake up one day and just decide like entrepreneur was your thing. That was the route you dreamt of always doing as a young girl, but it came out of like solving a problem for your former self. So I'd love for you to share that story because I think it's really, really powerful.
Yeah, I'd love to. So, I mean, you're so spot on. I think I always was, my husband was the one who's always like spinning ideas. And I was like, baby, you start it. I will operationalize it. I will make that business go, but it wasn't me who was like staying up at night thinking about what business can I start. But it all started after I had my first daughter. She was born during the midst of COVID. And I was going home back to the Northeast to visit my parents. She was almost like 9 months. And I had to figure out how to go and travel with 3 weeks worth of breast milk because I did not want to pump anymore. I mean, at this point, I had a huge stash in my freezer and I was traveling solo with a baby. I didn't want to travel with a pump, right? So I looked high and low for ways in which I could ship. For 3 weeks, you need almost 1,000 ounces of breast milk, right? So it's a hefty amount. And I was shocked that after like hours of research, I found this one company that did breast milk freeze drying. I was like, hey, what is this? My background's med device. I had been working in med device for a while. And so I definitely dug into the details of like data, where's the like clinical evidence. And I was like, this is really thoroughly vetted. I was on the wait list and I got in by a hair and it was life-changing. I think I got it like 2 days before my trip. And it was just like, I was so excited because I was screwed otherwise. But it was amazing. I mean, it was such a game changer in terms of being able to travel with my toddler. I mean, it was TSA compliant. It was so easy to create a bottle on the flight. And then, fast forward to my mom watching my daughter while I was working during the days. It was so easy for her to make a bottle, to just be able to provide her my breast milk while I wasn't there to provide it from the breast. And also I didn't have to like teach my mom how to properly thaw and like it hasn't been be thawed for more than 24 hours. All the small little nuances that obviously people get, but they're nuances that are super important. And I loved it so much. I remember just coming back and being appalled that through all my support system, I hadn't heard about this. Fast forward, here we are. I'm like, let's do this. I'm going to start a company. I think I was in the pool drinking some White Claws and just boasting about how incredible of an experience I just had with this.
So my youngest was born during COVID, but I can remember when my middle was born, that was just when, and I can't even remember the company's name right now, but when the company who ships your breast milk just
Milk
had
store.
launched, we're like, yep, there you go. They had just launched. And I remember thinking like my whole life just
Yeah.
changed because I was a full-time traveling consultant then. And that was when like there was all the outrage for TSA throwing breast milk away because it was liquid and like all of those things. So I can only imagine, like you were saying, like coming home and just being like, my whole life just
Yeah.
changed, and it seems so simple, but that's really what entrepreneurs do well, is we take these problems that we are not necessarily chasing after from a revenue perspective or money perspective, but we are chasing after from a passion perspective or a problem perspective. I always say my favorite entrepreneurs to work with are people who are solving problems for their former
Mm,
selves, because we searched and searched and searched for an answer and we just couldn't find either a readily available one or one that was super limited. And so now we're here to give that to other people. And I think you just show up very differently in your company when you're solving problems for that reason, instead of, oh, I'm here to build a business and make $1 million. And like, it's just a very different energy that you build a business from.
100%. I mean, being able to truly relate to your ideal customer and understand the pain points like firsthand make it, it is incredibly relatable, right? Like you understand, you can talk to them, you can lead with empathy, and you can understand what you want them to feel when they're buying or purchasing a service from you. It's funny, like to your point, like there is a people that are born and they're like, I just have this entrepreneurial spirit, and they can be incredibly successful. But sometimes entrepreneurship, you're not born knowing it, it kind of picks you, right? And that's when you're like, you got to go. Like there's something where you start thinking about it at night. So now I'm a corporate dropout and it was scary, right? I mean, I had a very well six-figure paying job, like very established. To leave that, I launched Milk by Mom 2 months postpartum with my second. So it was like I used the rest of my maternity leave to figure out like, is this viable? Is this going to be something that could potentially in the future be something that I leave my corporate job for? And I did. I juggled both for about 6 months, and then I was probably going to have a nervous breakdown and like I need to just go all in on this. Like I can't do this part-time.
Yeah, I'm much like you. I side hustled for a couple of years before I decided to finally go in, but it was like once
Mhm.
I was like, okay, this is it, this is the thing, I could not split my time anymore. And it wasn't because I couldn't physically juggle it. It was just mentally, my mind was so checked out of my corporate job and so all in on my business that it was like, I'm not doing anyone a service by splitting my brain in two places anymore because it's long
Yeah.
gone.
I feel you. I feel you 100%.
So looking back now, it's been a couple years since you launched. Looking back now, what was kind of the hardest thing in the beginning that you would go back and tell your younger self when you got started on this journey?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. Let's see. There's a couple things that come to mind. The first year was really hard. Like I mentioned, I had a newborn, and you know, we hear this so often that I feel like sometimes we get so sick of hearing it, and like, but mom guilt was so real, right? And I felt like I was just not enough, and as much as I tried to be fully present and from the very beginning, like made sure I had dinner every night with my girls, like I had dedicated one-on-one time with them, like it just felt like I was always falling short. And I wish that I could go back to that version of myself and give her a hug, because I was actually doing a really fucking good job, Gabs. Like,
Yeah.
and yes, it's so easy to compare and say that you could do better. Like, there's always going to be room for improvement. And no matter what, like, you're always going to sacrifice something. But yeah, it was a really, really tough year from that regard. And I think I also just felt so alone because entrepreneurship is so lonely that if I could go back, I would give her a hug and I would have said, start building community sooner. Because I
Mm.
literally, it was after my first year that I was like, okay, I know I need this. Like deep down, I need this. I'm so alone right now. And the next year, because we're 2 years in, this last year has been so different, having had built some of that community for myself. It's just, you don't have to do it alone.
Oh,
Yeah.
I resonate so much with that. One, because I didn't become an entrepreneur until I had 3 kids at
Oh,
home.
girl.
And so, it was always this, you talk about the juggle and you talk about the balance. And I think no matter what working mom definition you are, you're always going to have that feeling. But I also took that combined with being a workaholic who was building a business. And it did get to a point where my husband had to look at me and he said, your kids only see the top of your forehead over your laptop, and you need to start making some more serious choices. And it takes those kind of people in your life to help you correct your path and to help get you back on the path that you intend to do. Because again, many of us as entrepreneurs are building this out of passion, not out of a fluffy desire, right? Like we're doing this for a reason. So like you're not just working 24/7 because you want to, but it's like because I love this. I'm here for this. I want to be doing this. So that's really hard. And then also I think too, I never envisioned saying I was an entrepreneur coach or that I would be helping early stage entrepreneurs get their business off the ground. That even 5 years ago when I started my entrepreneurial journey, I would have never told you that that was what I was going to be
Mhm.
doing. I never foresaw that coming. But again, it chooses you, much like you said. And so I got to this point where my skill set and my strength was in helping people take those first few steps that feel really scary and reminding them. It's scary for all of us if we've been doing it for 5 minutes or 5 years, and none of us should be doing it alone. One of the interviews just the other week, we were saying if you're a solopreneur, by legal definition, doesn't mean that you should be doing entrepreneurship alone.
Mm.
Because most people in your life don't understand the journey that you're on. Unless you're one of the lucky ones who comes from a, long entrepreneurial family, most people cannot wrap their mind around the sheer volume of decisions you make every day, the risk you're standing up to take every day, the weight of the world that you're carrying, especially when you have, like you're saying, right? Like I'm getting ready to move into a bigger facility and I have a staff and I have all of these things. Like there's so much riding on that. And I think a lot of people can't consider what that feels like or what you're going through. And it's really important that you find your people to do this part of your life with, because we need people to just lift us up sometimes.
Yeah, I love that. It's so true. I don't come from an entrepreneurial family by any means, right? I have all very highly educated, highly successful, lots of lawyers, but the whole entrepreneurial thread is not something that's very common in my immediate family. They're my biggest fans. They're my like number one fans. They're my biggest supporters, but it also is just so tough when they just don't get it. You're like, oh, well, how long are you going to do this until the numbers make sense? You're like, it's very normal for my numbers to be where they are right now. And I'm actually, talking to people who have done this. They're like, hey, you're doing great. Right. So you would like have this person who on one side is completely questioning you. And then on the other side, you're like, hey, this is great what you've been able to accomplish. It's very normal to where you are today for 2 years in the business. So it's hard, right? I mean, entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. If it was, everybody would be doing
Yeah, absolutely. All right. All of our entrepreneur friends out there
it. Get
listening,
it.
just right now, stop what you're doing. Give yourself a massive pat on the back because you are doing the hard work today and we are very proud of you.
Yes, 100%. You're doing amazing. Just the fact that you're on the journey is such a testament to you. Give yourself grace and learn where to surrender in life. I just feel it's so hard.
I have to read this to you just because it's on my Insight Timer app today and you said it. And grace is like a thing I say all the time. Like, give yourself grace. The quote was, all human nature vigorously resists grace because grace changes us and change is
Mhm.
painful. And I was just, it struck me this morning because I thought we all say, like, give yourself grace is like a nice thing, but it's hard, right? Because Giving yourself grace means you're doing something you've never done before or you're walking a new journey. And so that's why you need grace is because what you're walking through is hard.
I think there's also like this entirely additional component to it that it's like there's a lot of inner work that needs to happen. And you don't need to be an entrepreneur, right? I mean, obviously entrepreneurship or being a mom really was the catalyst for me. And but there is this inner work that you have to do, and it's changing the narrative in terms of how you talk to yourself about things. And yeah, like just recognizing you are enough, you are worthy, you are all these things, because sometimes we have very self sabotaging, limiting beliefs that are just ingrained in us from very small, since we were children. And they're so deeply ingrained that you have to rewire and shift the way that your mind's constantly talking to itself. And I am certainly on that journey and working through that. I have a ways to go, but I can certainly you know, say that it's been a huge impact in the way that I sometimes like I'm just framing things for myself or even recognizing threshold, like where I am and being able to like, hey, tap out.
Entrepreneurship has definitely been, yeah, combine that with motherhood for sure. But I say it's been the journey that has taught me the most about myself ever. In any other journey I've walked in my life, this has been the thing that has taught me the most about myself. And no matter how long I choose to stay on this journey, I'm very thankful for the awareness it's given
Yeah,
me.
I love that.
What's coming up next in your journey that we can help support and give you love?
Yeah, well, definitely follow us along at Milk by Mom on all the social channels. That always helps. And if you know of a mom or are a mom who is either pregnant or breastfeeding, just definitely keep us in mind. It isn't a one size fit all. It doesn't mean you have to do your entire stash, but definitely give us a shot because it will truly revolutionize your life and you'll love it. So will your husbands and your caregivers and your tribe around you if you have one. And if we can ever be a part of your journey, we'd be honored to support you.
We'll make sure all the links are in the show notes below so that way you guys can connect with them directly. That's all for this week's episode of Overwhelmed and Over It. I know being a founder can feel lonely, but you don't have to figure it all out by yourself. If you're craving real talk with other entrepreneurs who get exactly what you're going through, join us in the Brave Starts monthly Q&A circle. It's our judgment-free zone where no question is too basic, too messy, because trust me, we've all been there. You can grab your free spot at thebravestart.com. And please make sure we're connected on LinkedIn. I share daily reminders that the entrepreneurship roller coaster is totally normal. I'm your host, Gabs, and until next week, remember, building a business is hard enough. Let's not make it harder by doing it alone. I'll catch you in the next episode.